On today's episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides, we'll talk about topics like the White House's bombshell press briefing they had last night, a U.S. Senator wasting your tax dollars and my tax dollars going to El Salvador for a PR stunt. We'll talk about updates with the Carmelo Anthony Austin Metcalfe trial. We'll also talk about something that astronomers have possibly found in space. And Trump says a deal with China could be on the table soon. All that and much more coming up on today's episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides, starting now.
The moment is here. This is our moment.
America, we are back, baby. Welcome to another episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides. This is episode 43, and this is an episode I'm very excited about. Last night, we had a masterclass of a press briefing from the White House. Caroline Leavitt came up, and she not only destroyed the liberal media, but she showed them proof and evidence that the person who was deported was an El Salvadorian citizen, an MS-13 gang member, had no business being in the United States, and we should be allowed and were allowed to deport this individual. El Salvador would have to release this individual from jail, bring him to the United States and say, hey, will you take this individual back, for the U.S. to have to accept this person under the Supreme Court's court ruling. So no, Trump is not defying court orders, but I want to get to what really made this press briefing such a masterclass. It all started with Senator Chris Van Hollen, if that's how you don't pronounce his name, who cares, but Senator Chris Van Hollen, he is a senator from Maryland. He traveled to El Salvador on taxpayer dollars. So on Maryland taxpayer-funded dollars, if you live in the state of Maryland, your taxes paid for this, he flew to El Salvador to visit El Salvador's super prison and seek the release of this MS-13 gang member to try and then bring him back to the United States. This was obviously a huge PR stunt. They were denied at the doors of the prison to even get into the prison, obviously. Why would they want to allow a murderer out of their jail into their country and say, oh, he's going to go back to the U.S.? They're allies with the U.S. as well. They wouldn't want to do that to us, but why would they? What right-minded individual would let an MS-13 gang member out of jail? I don't know. It just does not seem like a smart move. I don't understand the thought process behind liberals when it came to the media spinoff of this Maryland father, as they love to call him. This man was an MS-13 gang member. I'm very glad he was deported, and Trump did it rightfully so. But to get back to this senator, let's talk about how after he goes there, he makes a video. I'm going to play the video for you guys after I talk about this for a second, but he makes a video where, again, a PR stunt talking about getting denied at the gate, how it's unfair, how he thinks whatever Trump is doing is unfair, and he's really just complaining to the camera for media and PR attention. And then while they're there, Caroline Leavitt steps up to the microphone at a last-second press conference. Caroline Leavitt also brings a special guest. She brings Patty Morin, the mother of Rachel Morin. She was a Maryland woman, one of Chris Van Hollen's constituents, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. This woman came up, told her story, a very tragic, sad story. The entire press briefing is on our channel if you want to go watch it. I'm not going to include it right here because it's too long to include. But she told a very sad, very hard to listen to story of the details of what happened to her daughter by an illegal immigrant right in the city that Chris Van Hollen oversees. So for him to be over in El Salvador, wasting taxpayer dollars and not thinking about his constituents who have been affected by these illegal immigrants in the first place, it's insane to me. I don't understand it. He wants to bring an MS-13 gang member back into the United States. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to play the video of the senator for you guys. This is him and his PR stunt outside the jail in El Salvador. We'll talk about it right after, and then we'll talk about a little bit more about how ridiculous this guy is.
I'm here with Chris Newman, who is the attorney for the wife and mother of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And we just tried to go visit him in prison just to check on his conditions. Is he doing okay? Because nobody has any communication with him since he was illegally abducted from Maryland and sent to CCOT prison in El Salvador, which is a U.S. District Court judge said was a violation of all his due process rights. Today's purpose was just to see what his health condition is. And these soldiers were ordered to prevent us from going any farther from this spot. I understand we're about 3 kilometers now from CCOT. And as you can see, they're letting other cars go by, but they stopped us because they're under orders not to allow us to proceed to check on the well-being of Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
This is an absolute media stunt by this individual. The well-being of an MS-13 gang member who is not a U.S. citizen in an El Salvadorian prison is no business of a U.S. senator who is on a taxpayer salary. You should not be anywhere but in your office right now helping your constituents out. It is ridiculous the fact that you, on taxpayer dollars, flew to El Salvador, in which you knew you weren't going to even get to the prison. You knew you wouldn't even get to the gate. But you still went. You still wasted all the tax dollars. You still ignored your constituents. I don't understand it. The White House right after their press briefing while they were in El Salvador, this is why I think their social media team is genius. I'm going to pop these up just right here on the side here, but you could see just how crazy it is that while this individual is posting on Instagram about trying to save an illegal immigrant who is not even a U.S. citizen and bring him back in the U.S., the White House is sharing the story of the mother who lost their daughter as one of his constituents, and then they're then saying, hey, we're tagging you as a contributor on the post. This is something that, you're involved with. He doesn't accept it. Then you look in his comments, he's just getting absolutely eviscerated the entire time. Why? Because he's a clown. Because anyone who wastes taxpayer dollars for a PR stunt to go to El Salvador and doesn't care about American citizens the same way they care about citizens of other countries, especially ones who operate under foreign terrorist organizations like MS-13, whose motto is rape, conquer, kill, should not be a U.S. senator and should not get a single penny in U.S. taxpayer dollar salary. It is a joke that this person gets a single penny in a salary. It is a joke that this person has a job in the government and that this person even has a job in general. This person is obviously extremely low IQ. Maybe they can get a job in PR or the media because they're obviously very good at lying. But other than that, what else could this person be good at? This person is a disgrace to America, a disgrace to the American government, and his constituents should vote him out as soon as possible. If you're one of his constituents in Maryland, I urge you to write this individual. Let them know how upset you are with the waste, fraud, and abuse when it comes to your taxpayer dollars funding this individual's trips to El Salvador to try and retrieve an MS-13 gang member that he wants to live in your neighborhood. It is a joke, the fact that he gets away with that. He should not. I want to go on to some of our other topics. We do have a few other topics today. This one also has a video, but we've been talking about this a lot, but there is just new updates, and this one is kind of heartbreaking. So we've talked about the Austin Metcalfe murder. Austin Metcalfe was murdered by Carmelo Anthony. He was stabbed in the chest at a track meet in Texas. Both boys were 17. Carmelo Anthony claimed self-defense, but to walk you guys again through the story, Carmelo Anthony was sitting inside the opposing team's tent when he was asked to move by Austin Metcalfe. He said, no, what are you going to do about it? Not a fight, but a argument ensued, and then he stabbed him in self-defense after he was pushed. I don't think when someone pushes you, stabbing them in the heart is the right decision. I also don't think you should have been sitting in the other team's tent in the first place. If you're sitting in the other team's tent with a knife in your bag, and when someone asks you to move, your first instinct is, what are you going to do about it? You were looking for a fight. This individual was no doubt in my mind looking for a confrontation. Maybe he wasn't looking to murder someone that day, but it happened. So I have a huge problem with the media's narrative behind this. I have a huge problem with the fact that this person has received millions in donations on GoFundMe. They have bought a new $1 million house and a new car upon being released from jail. But above all of that, I have a huge problem with this. at the press conference today, the defense attorney for Carmelo Anthony said this about Austin Metcalfe's father. I'm going to play the video for you guys, and then I'm going to absolutely rip it apart after.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family, but he did it. And so I say to people, actions speak louder than words. Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism. We have conservative operatives that have been posting nonstop about this case.
Conservatives are posting nonstop about this case because time and time again, certain communities would go ahead and burn down Targets, CVS's, houses, neighborhoods, gas stations, just all different kinds of buildings in their neighborhoods when, someone was murdered or as they would claim murdered in their race. But when a 17-year-old innocent white child is stabbed in the heart at a track meet by an individual who is sitting in the wrong tent, and when asked to move, stabs the individual in the heart, you are going to upset a lot of conservatives. I do notice a difference, though. Not one of them burned down a building. I don't think any conservatives have even been, arrested or protested over this. I haven't seen any massive news stories and headlines. It hasn't, violence hasn't ensued. I haven't had to see them put a city on lockdown because of it. All the things that happen with BLM. But again, you could eliminate race from this completely, and I honestly think we should. When you eliminate race from this completely, this individual is still just as guilty. He stabbed another individual, another 17-year-old child who will never see his parents again, and his parents will never see him again because he asked him to move. It is just obviously, I don't know how more obvious it could be that this child was the aggressor, but for this lawyer to get up there and to say that it was disrespectful for Austin Metcalfe's father to be at a public press conference regarding the individual who murdered his son, it is one of the most disrespectful and despicable things that lawyer could have said. That father is in mourning. That father lost his child because the murderer that you are defending stabbed a 17-year-old child in the heart and took his life because he didn't want to move out of a place he wasn't supposed to be in the first place. Do you not get how ridiculous that is? I obviously know the lawyer does, but he's his lawyer, so that's his job. But for the lawyer to get up there and call go after the father, are you kidding me? It is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Yes, you're going to piss conservatives off when you do that. It is, that father has every right to be there. If I had a son, got murdered, I promise you, I would be at every press conference afforded to me to be able to ask every single question. It's just, I don't understand. I would want to understand the full scope of things as the dad. There's so many questions and unanswered things in that father's head. For that lawyer to say that he had no place being in a public press conference is one of the most ridiculous things. And saying he has no place near this family, your defendant had no right to stab his son in the heart. He took a knife and physically shoved it into his skin, through his heart, and killed him. He died in his twin brother's arms. His parents, his mother, and father did not get to hear his last words. That is terrible. This person, Carmelo Anthony, should rot in prison, regardless of their color of skin. I think the media's lack of portrayal of this case is one of the most ridiculous things. The reasons conservatives are so upset is because of the media's lack of portrayal over everything. It is just one-sided how this goes with the media. I want to get on to a couple of our last topics. I want to talk about U.S.-China trade relations. This is, again, another topic we've talked about a good bit. But Trump is now saying today that he's very optimistic that they will reach a trade deal with China extremely soon. China is being slightly standoffish with it, saying that Donald Trump's tariffs are not the correct way to go about this, but Donald Trump is pushing back against unfair trade practice that has existed for decades. The White House has released a over 300-page file where it highlights every single country and the unfair trade practices by those countries that they've implemented on the U.S. I urge everyone to read it. It's on the White House's website. But China has been unfairly exposing the United States in trade for decades, and it's about time we finally got in the right place of trade with China, and I'm glad we have a leader as strong as Donald Trump to take the wheel at that. I want to get into one of the wilder topics we've had today. This is a very sad one. We have had a shooting at Florida State University today. There's not a ton of information released yet. Tomorrow, I'm sure I will have a way bigger update on this. But it has resulted in 5 deaths and 4 injuries. I do want to pray for the families, the victims of I want to pray for the victims and the families of the victims as well. This is obviously a tragedy when anything like this happens. I think in times like this are times when we really need to look at college budgets, look at where they're putting their money, cut unnecessary spending, and fund armed security on campuses. All colleges should have armed security. I do think this is a necessity. I do think it's also a good way to employ ex-police officers, ex-veterans who are looking for work and are stable. I think this is a tragedy that this happened. Like I said, there's not a ton of information on this. There will be a lot more information on it tomorrow, but again, I pray for the victims. I pray for the families, and the information I think we do have as well is there were 2 shooters. 1 shooter is dead and 1 shooter is in police custody. But other than that, there's not a ton of information, and I do think this is a time where we address mental health things as well. I think this younger generation is statistically, it's the most depressed, medicated, drug-using generation of all time. That I think a few different things play a factor. I think the crappy things that are in our food, microplastics, different products that are, again, things that are in our food, hair products, care products, whatever, that get into our bodies. And then again, just giving kids too many medicines at a young age. I think marijuana is also a problem. I'm someone who has gone back and forth on my thoughts on marijuana a lot. While I do think it is a positive thing, I do also understand the addiction side of it. And while people say it's not addictive, that's one of the biggest lies that's ever told. It's an extremely addictive substance. So I do think we live upon the most drug addicted and depressed generation of all time, and I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think those two things definitely align, play a factor with each other. Obviously, marijuana and things like that can help certain people. This isn't me saying I'm anti-marijuana. Like I said, I go back and forth on certain things with it a lot. I'm extremely pro-marijuana, but at the same time, I do see a lot of the negative side effects, and I think just the over drug use and things like that are things that play factors into why there's been a huge raise in school shootings and things like that, when back in the day, people used to have their rifle in their truck and school shootings didn't happen. Why was there a time where not everyone, but a lot of people had guns at school and school shootings weren't a thing, and now at times where there's the strictest gun laws we've ever had in the history of our nation, do we have peak school shootings? It is a mental health crisis to me, not a gun problem. I think anyone who's saying it's a gun problem is corrupted by the big media. I do want to get into our last topic of the day. This is, again, one I'm extremely excited about. But potential signs of life have been found on exoplanet K218b. This isn't something to, jump up for, it's just very, very early stages of things. But the James Webb Space Telescope, it was a multi-billion-dollar project released and sent into space a few years ago. It takes pictures. To be honest, I don't understand the full science of it, but it takes pictures that, other satellites and telescopes can't, from much further distances, light years away. But what it's saying is that, I'm going to read this to you guys here, about 124 light years away, they're saying there is planet that it has compounds on it that's associated with marine life on Earth. So what they're saying is the compounds, the different gases and things they're seeing from the telescope, from the readings from this telescope, they're finding different compounds and gases that you would find if you had marine life on Earth. Like these marine life give them off when they breathe, or they aren't extremely descriptive in this, but there is a lot of different findings on it, a lot of different research articles, and a lot of different companies writing about these findings. I think over the next few weeks we'll get a little more information on this, or if we hear nothing, we'll know it was nothing. This is why I'm saying I don't think anyone should be jumping out of their hats at this. I think if we found aliens, everyone would know. But I do think this is just an exciting step in just exploring vast parts of space that we weren't able to, but we now can under the James Webb Space Telescope. I'm James Pascalides. This has been episode 43 of America Unfiltered. I'm signing off today. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you. On January 20th, President Donald Trump signed Executive Order 14172, naming the body of water off of Southwest Florida the Gulf of America. Now we're bringing the Gulf of America right to your door. If you're looking to show your patriotism and rep the Gulf of America, go on madeInswiffle.com to get your Gulf of America gear. Hats for $15, shirts for $20, and koozies are just $5. It's simple, affordable, and made right here in America. MadeInswiffle.com. Get all your Gulf of America gear shipped right to your door anywhere in the USA.